A flight attendant's voice cuts through the quiet cabin, sharp and laced with disdain. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." 17-year-old Maya doesn't even look up from her book. Beside her, a police officer, his face a mask of impatience, places a heavy hand on her shoulder. "You heard him, miss. Let's go." The other first-class passengers are watching, their eyes a mix of pity and suspicion. Maya sighs, closes her book, and pulls out her phone. She presses a single number. The officer scoffs. "Who are you calling? Your lawyer?" Maya meets his gaze, her own eyes like ice. "No," she says, as the call connects. "I'm calling my father. He's the CEO of Aegis Dynamics, and he's the man who is about to cancel this flight." The Globalis Airlines first-class lounge at JFK's Terminal 8 was an ocean of cultivated tranquility. The scent of expensive espresso and old leather hung in the air, a deliberate aroma designed to soothe the anxieties of transatlantic travel. Passengers spoke in hushed tones, the clinking of porcelain on saucers the loudest sound in the room. 17-year-old Maya Thompson felt perfectly at home. Dressed in dark jeans, a simple grey sweatshirt from her university's physics department, and a pair of worn-in sneakers, she was engrossed in a heavy textbook. Principles of Quantum Electrodynamics. She was flying solo to London to present a research paper at an undergraduate symposium. For her, this was a working trip. The plush armchair was just a comfortable desk. She was, however, being watched. Across the lounge, Mrs. Beatrice Croft nursed a glass of complimentary champagne. She was a woman in her late 50s, draped in a beige cashmere wrap that probably cost more than Maya's entire semester's book budget. Mrs. Croft's eyes kept flicking from Maya to the entrance and back to Maya. She saw a black teenager, dressed in street clothes, occupying a space reserved for the elite. In her mind, the equation didn't balance. She saw someone who didn't belong. When the boarding call for Globalis flight GA100 to London. Heathrow was announced. Mrs. Croft made a point to cut in front of Maya in the priority lane. Maya didn't notice, or didn't care, simply waiting her turn. On board the massive Boeing 777, Maya found her seat. 2A. It wasn't just a seat, it was a first suite, a self-contained pod with polished wood trim, a personal minibar, and a door that slid shut for privacy. She stowed her backpack and textbook, settled in, and was about to put on her noise-cancelling headphones when the flight attendant for her section approached. His name tag read Trent. He was tall, with a practiced, artificial smile that did not reach his eyes. "Can I get you a pre-departure beverage, ma'am?" he asked the woman in 2C, Mrs. Croft. "Champagne? Orange juice?" "Champagne, thank you," Mrs. Croft simpered, her eyes already darting toward Maya. Trent served Mrs. Croft, then turned to Maya. The smile vanished. "You need anything?" he asked, his tone flat. "Just some sparkling water, please," Maya said. Trent returned, passed her the glass without a word, and immediately turned back to Mrs. Croft. "Is everything to your liking, Mrs. Croft?" "Well, mostly," Mrs. Croft said, leaning in conspiratorially and lowering her voice just enough that Maya had to strain to hear. "I don't want to be that person, but I am a little concerned about security in this cabin." Trent's posture stiffened. "Ma'am?" "That girl," she gestured blatantly at Maya. She was in the lounge, acting very suspicious, just staring at her book, not talking to anyone. And now she's in this seat. These are very expensive tickets, Trent. I don't feel entirely safe. It seems unlikely that she paid for it. This was the seed. Trent, a man who prided himself on protecting the integrity of the first-class experience, saw his opening. He looked at Maya, who was now just trying to read her book. He saw her sweatshirt, her sneakers, and her skin, and he made a decision. Mrs. Croft's prejudice had just given him permission to act on his own. He walked over to seat 2A. "Ma'am," he said, his voice loud enough for the cabin to hear, "I need to see your boarding pass again." Maya blinked, pulling one earbud out. "I'm sorry?" "Your boarding pass, and your passport. I need to verify your seat." Okay." Maya frowned, confused. "I already showed it at the gate, and at the plane door. We are doing an additional security check, ma'am." Maya sighed, sensing the performance. She dutifully retrieved her documents from her bag and handed them to him. Trent looked at the name. Maya Thompson. He looked at the seat. 2A. He handed it back, his lips pursed. He had been hoping for a fake or a mix-up. "Is there a problem?" Maya asked. "This is a very expensive seat," Trent said, echoing Mrs. Croft. "Are you absolutely sure you're meant to be here? You weren't reseated from economy?" The insult was clear. Every head in the small first-class cabin turned. Maya felt a hot flush of anger, but she held her father's primary lesson in her mind. Never let them see you lose control. The person who is calm is the person with the power. "I am in the correct seat," Maya said, her voice dropping to a cool, level tone. "My father booked the ticket. I am flying to London for a conference. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to get back to my reading." Trent was furious. He had been dismissed by a teenager. Mrs. Croft was watching him, a little smirk on her face. He felt his authority being challenged in his cabin. "If you're going to take that tone with me," Trent hissed, "I'm going to have to assume you're being non-compliant. I'm just trying to ensure the comfort and security of our actual first-class passengers." "And I'm telling you, I am one of them," Maya said, her voice rising slightly. "You are harassing me. Are you asking every other passenger to re-verify their tickets, or just me?" "That's it," Trent snapped. He looked toward the open cockpit. "We're not taking off like this." He marched to the front galley and picked up the in-flight phone. "Get me airport security to gate 12. I have a non-compliant passenger who is refusing to verify her identity. Possible stolen ticket." He hung up and looked back at Maya with a triumphant sneer. "You should have just taken the hint, girl." The atmosphere in the cabin, once a bubble of privileged calm, instantly became thick and toxic. The door of the aircraft, which had been moments from closing, remained open. A gate agent, looking confused, peered in. "What's the delay, Trent?" "Security issue," Trent said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Handling a passenger who won't cooperate." Maya sat, frozen. This was escalating at a speed she couldn't comprehend. She could feel the stares of the other passengers. A man in 3D muttered to his wife, probably one of those influencers trying to get a free upgrade. A woman in 1A just shook her head, burying her face in the Wall Street Journal. Mrs. Croft, however, was thriving. She was now the star of her own drama. "Thank you so much, Trent," she said, projecting her voice. "One simply cannot be too careful these days. I saw her in the lounge. She was probably filming us all. Stole someone's boarding pass, I'd wager." "I did not," Maya said, her composure finally cracking. "I'm a student. You have no right to say that." "Oh, a student?" Mrs. Croft scoffed. "A student of what exactly? How to scam your way into first class?" Before Maya could respond, two figures in dark blue Port Authority police uniforms stepped onto the jet bridge and paused at the aircraft door. The senior officer was a man in his late 40s named Mark Sullivan. He had a thick neck and an air of permanent, low-grade irritation. He was the kind of man who enjoyed the simple, binary power of his uniform. His partner was younger, Officer Lydia Chen. She looked new and deeply uncomfortable, as if she already knew this was going to be a mountain of paperwork. "Who called it in?" Sullivan barked, stepping into the cabin. Trent immediately pointed. "I did, officer. This passenger in 2A. She's being disruptive and refuses to cooperate. She's raised her voice to me and other passengers. We suspect her ticket is not valid, and she's becoming hostile." Officer Sullivan didn't ask questions. He didn't look at the manifest. He didn't consult the gate agent. He looked at Trent, a white man in a uniform. He looked at Mrs. Croft, an affluent-looking white woman. And then he looked at Maya, a young black woman in a sweatshirt. He had his entire case tried and convicted in 3 seconds. "All right, let's go," Sullivan said, his voice a gravelly command. He walked straight up to Maya's seat. "Ma'am, I need you to gather your personal belongings and come with me. Now." Maya's heart was hammering against her ribs. "Officer, I have done nothing wrong. My ticket is valid. I am in my assigned seat. This flight attendant is harassing me, and that woman is lying." Sullivan's face hardened. "I'm not going to ask you again. You are delaying the departure of an international flight. You are interfering with a flight crew. That is a federal offense. I can and will arrest you. Get up." "Mark," Officer Chen said, quietly, stepping forward. "Mark, let's ask the gate agent to check the manifest first." "Sir," she said to Trent, "can you just scan her pass again on your system? Let's just verify." Trent waved a dismissive hand. "We're past that. She's causing a disturbance. Our policy is 0 tolerance. We need to remove her." Sullivan nodded, clearly annoyed by his partner's hesitation. "See, the crew wants her off. That's all I need. Get up, miss, or I will make you get up." He was standing over her now, his presence filling her small pod. He was intentionally intimidating her. Maya looked at Trent, whose face was smug. She looked at Mrs. Croft, who was watching with undisguised glee. She looked at Officer Chen, who was nervously looking at her own boots. "I will not," Maya said, her voice shaking but her resolve hardening. "You have no legal basis to remove me. I am a ticketed passenger. If you touch me, it will be assault." "Assault?" Sullivan let out a short, ugly laugh. "That's a good one. That's it. You're coming with me." He reached down and grabbed Maya's arm, his fingers digging into her bicep. A collective gasp went through the cabin. This was no longer just an argument. The physical contact, the violation, snapped something in Maya. The fear vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp anger. She didn't try to pull away. She didn't scream. She simply used her other hand to reach into her pocket and pull out her phone. Sullivan saw the movement. "Oh, here we go. You're going to film me. Go ahead. It'll just be more evidence when I charge you with resisting." "I'm not filming you," Maya said, her fingers unlocking the screen. She pressed a single contact, one listed in her favorites simply as Dad. The phone began to ring. Sullivan held her arm, a look of contemptuous amusement on his face. "Who's this? Your boyfriend? Your lawyer? It doesn't matter. You're off this plane." The call clicked. A deep, powerful voice answered on the first ring. "Maya? Honey, are you on the plane? Is everything okay?" The voice that came through the phone was calm, clear, and radiated an authority that was utterly at odds with the chaotic, pressurized cabin. It was the voice of Robert Thompson. At that exact moment, Robert Thompson was not Dad. He was standing in a glass-walled boardroom on the 68th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper. He had just stepped out of a critical meeting with the board of directors for his company, Aegis Dynamics, a global leader in aerospace logistics and predictive AI. He never ever took personal calls during a board meeting, but his ironclad rule was that if his daughter called, he answered. The world stopped. "Dad," Maya said, her voice trembling but controlled. "I'm on the plane. Flight GA-100. A flight attendant named Trent and a police officer. His name tag says Sullivan, are trying to remove me from my seat. They said my ticket is stolen. He just put his hands on me." On the 68th floor, Robert Thompson's entire demeanor shifted. The concerned father disappeared, replaced by the CEO. His eyes went flat. "Put me on speaker, Maya." "Right now." Maya tapped the icon. "You're on speaker, Dad." Officer Sullivan, still holding Maya's arm, scoffed. "Sir, this is a Port Authority police matter. Your daughter is interfering with a flight crew and is being removed from the aircraft. I suggest you advise her to comply." Robert Thompson's voice boomed from the small phone. It was a voice accustomed to silencing rooms 10 times this size. "This is Robert Thompson. Officer Sullivan, you will remove your hand from my daughter's arm immediately." Sullivan was taken aback by the sheer command in the tone, but his arrogance wouldn't let him back down. "And who are you, sir? Doesn't matter. She's coming with me." "I am the man who paid for that ticket," Robert said, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "My daughter, Maya Thompson, is in seat 2A. Her ticket was booked 6 weeks ago through the Aegis Dynamics corporate travel account. Your flight attendant, Trent, was informed of this and refused to verify it. You, Officer Sullivan, are now committing assault against a minor." The name Aegis Dynamics hung in the air. Trent's smug expression evaporated. His face went chalk white. He wasn't just a flight attendant. He was a senior purser. He read the business journals. He knew exactly who Aegis Dynamics was. They were Globalis Airlines' single largest corporate partner. They routed all of their global freight and all of their executive travel, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, through Globalis. Mrs. Croft in 2C looked confused. She'd never heard of it. "What's an Aegis? Just get her off the plane." Officer Sullivan was undeterred. He was PAPD. A name didn't scare him. "Sir, I don't care if you're the Pope. She's delaying this flight. I'm removing her. It's my call." "You are mistaken, officer," Robert's voice replied. "It is not your call. It is no longer even the captain's call. It is now my call." Sullivan began to pull Maya from the seat. "That's it. You've been warned." "Maya," Robert said, his voice cutting through her panic. "What is the tail number of the aircraft? It's on the safety card in your seat pocket." "What?" Maya fumbled, her free hand pulling out the laminated card. "It's N754GA. "Thank you, honey. Stay calm. He won't be touching you for much longer." On his end, Robert Thompson, still in the boardroom hallway, was already on another line with his executive assistant. "Get me James Harrington, the CEO of Globalis. Not his assistant. Get him. I don't care if he's in a meeting, in the air, or in the shower. Tell his office that Robert Thompson is pulling the entire Aegis contract, effective in 30 seconds, unless he is on my line." He clicked back to Maya. Officer Sullivan was now trying to unbuckle her seatbelt. "Officer Sullivan," Robert's voice boomed, chillingly calm. "You have exactly 60 seconds to apologize to my daughter, return to your duties, and allow that plane to depart. If, at the end of that 60 seconds, you are still touching her, I will assume you are a credible and active threat to her safety, and I will act accordingly. Trent, you have 60 seconds to inform your captain that you have made a catastrophic error." "Are you threatening me?" Sullivan bellowed, finally enraged. "You're threatening a police officer? That's it. We're adding that to the charges." He put his hand on his handcuffs. Officer Chen stepped forward again, her face pale. "Mark, stop. This is getting out of hand. Let's just step back." "You stay out of this, Chen. This is my scene." 50 seconds, said the voice from the phone. Trent was hyperventilating. "Officer, maybe Maybe we should wait. Let's just— All of you, back off, Sullivan shouted. 40 seconds. Suddenly, a new voice, filled with fury, cut through the cabin. What in God's name is happening in my first class? It was the captain, Captain David Reed. He was a veteran pilot with 30,000 hours, and he was furious about the delay and the shouting on his aircraft. He emerged from the cockpit, his face red. "Sir," Trent stammered, "this passenger, she's refusing to leave." Sullivan turned. "Captain, I'm Officer Sullivan, Port Authority. This individual is interfering with your crew. I'm removing her so you can depart." Maya, seeing the new ultimate authority, spoke up, her voice desperate. "Dad, the captain is here. Tell him." Robert seized the opening. "Captain," his voice rang out, "my name is Robert Thompson. I am the CEO of Aegis Dynamics. My minor daughter, Maya Thompson, is the legitimate, ticketed passenger in seat 2A. Your flight attendant, Trent, and this officer are attempting to illegally remove and assault her. I am on the phone with your CEO, James Harrington's office right now. I am informing him that due to a hostile and unsafe crew, I am pulling our $400 million corporate travel and freight contract, effective immediately." Captain Reed's blood ran cold. He knew that name, Aegis Dynamics. It wasn't just an account, it was the account. It was the only reason their New York-London freight route was profitable. As if on cue, the light on the cockpit communications panel flashed. It wasn't the tower. It was the direct line from Globalis Global Operations in Dallas, a call that only came in for emergencies. Captain Reed's eyes went wide. He looked at Sullivan. He looked at Trent. He looked at Maya, still held in her seat. He dove back into the cockpit. "Don't anybody move!" he snarled. He was in there for exactly 15 seconds. When he emerged, his face was white as a sheet. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "All right," he announced, his voice shaking with a rage that eclipsed everyone else's. "Everybody off. Get off the plane, now." The cabin exploded. "What? Off the plane? We just got on." "I have a connection in London." Captain Reed held up a hand. "There is no more discussion. This flight is cancelled. We are deplaning the entire aircraft. Immediately. All passengers, please take your belongings and return to the terminal." "This is ridiculous," Mrs. Croft shrieked, standing up. "It's her fault. Just remove her. Why are we all being punished?" Captain Reed locked eyes with her. "Ma'am, your complaint has been noted. You will also be speaking with our security team in the terminal. In fact, I insist on it." His gaze then fell on Trent. "Trent, you will go to the operations office. Now. Do not talk to anyone. Just go." Trent looked as if he'd been shot. He nodded, dumbly, his entire career flashing before his eyes. Finally, the captain turned to Officer Sullivan. Sullivan was completely bewildered. His authority had vanished. "Captain, you can't cancel a flight. I have this situation under control." "No, officer, you don't," Captain Reed said, his voice dripping with venom. "You and your partner will remain right here. The Port Authority Police Superintendent, the JFK Station Commander, and, I believe, a representative from the Mayor's office are on their way to this gate. It seems you are the security threat we're all so concerned about." Officer Chen looked physically relieved. Officer Sullivan's face went through a rapid series of emotions. Confusion to anger to a dawning, sickening realization. He had messed with the wrong person. He let go of Maya's arm as if it were on fire. Maya, trembling, put her phone back to her ear. "Dad?" "I'm here, Maya. It's over. I'm on my way." The deplaning was a scene of chaos. Irate passengers, muttering and glaring, filed past Maya's seat. Many of them shot her dirty looks, blaming her for the disruption. Mrs. Croft, as she passed, hissed, "I hope you're proud of yourself, you little fraud." Maya just met her gaze, silent, until the woman looked away. When the cabin was clear, save for the crew, the two officers, and Maya, a new figure appeared, a woman in a sharp Globalis executive suit. Her name was Sarah Jenkins, the JFK station manager. She had clearly run to the gate. She ignored everyone else and walked directly to Maya, her face a mask of professional panic and profound apology. "Miss Thompson, I'm Sarah Jenkins, the station manager here. On behalf of Globalis Airlines, the words cannot... I am so sorry. Please come with me. We have the flagship VIP lounge waiting for you. Your father is en route." Maya, shaking, finally stood up. She grabbed her backpack and her textbook. She walked out of the cabin, past Sullivan, who was now being spoken to in low, furious tones by his partner. He refused to look at Maya. He just stared at the bulkhead, his career in ashes. The scene in the terminal was a nightmare. The gate area for GA100 was a mob of screaming passengers, all demanding answers. News of the cancellation had spread. Operational issue was the official line, but the rumor, started by the deplaning passengers, was security threat in first class. Sarah Jenkins personally escorted Maya through a private door, down a service hallway, and into the inner sanctum of the airport, the flagship VIP lounge. This was a place Maya had been before, a quiet, unmarked room reserved for celebrities and high-level diplomats. 20 minutes later, the door opened. It wasn't a limo driver. It was Robert Thompson himself. He hadn't driven from Manhattan. He had taken a Sikorsky helicopter from the downtown heliport to a private pad at JFK. He was flanked by two men in dark suits who were his personal security detail. He walked straight to Maya, bypassing the apologizing airline staff, and just pulled her into a hug. He held her for a long time. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Dad," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I'm just so angry." "I know," he said, his voice rumbling, "and you have every right to be." He turned to Sarah Jenkins. "Ms. Jenkins, my daughter needs to get to London." "Mr. Thompson," Sarah said, wringing her hands, "we have a private Gulfstream GE50 being fueled right now. It will take you and Miss Thompson directly to London City Airport. The flight crew is waiting. Your luggage is being transferred. The aircraft," she said, meaning the 777, "has been taken out of service. The entire crew has been grounded, pending a full investigation." "A full investigation," Robert repeated, his voice flat. "Good. One more thing. Before we go, I want to see them. Sir, the flight attendant, the officer, and," he added, his eyes narrowing, "the passenger who started this. I want to see them. Now." The air in the sterile, windowless conference room in the airport's operations wing was suffocating. Officer Mark Sullivan and Officer Lydia Chen sat on one side of a long, laminate table. On the other side sat their direct supervisor, Captain Miller of the Port Authority Police, and a stern-looking man in a suit who had introduced himself as the Deputy Commissioner. Sullivan had been trying to defend himself for 10 minutes. "I was following the crew's request. He said she was non-compliant. He said she was a threat. I followed protocol." Captain Miller slammed his hand on the table, making Sullivan jump. "Your protocol, Sullivan, is to de-escalate. Your protocol is to verify. Your protocol is not to lay your hands on a 17-year-old girl because a flight attendant with an attitude problem tells you to. We pulled your body cam footage. You didn't ask a single question. You went in like a stormtrooper. You escalated. You threatened. You assaulted a minor." She was interfering with a flight. "She was reading a book," Miller roared. "And do you know who she is? Do you have any idea what you just did? You just cost this city's primary airline, its biggest partner." The mayor's office has been on the phone for 30 minutes. They think Aegis Dynamics is going to pull its freight hub out of JFK. That's 5,000 jobs, Mark." Sullivan's bravado finally, totally, collapsed. He sank in his chair. "Officer Chen," the deputy commissioner said, his voice quiet, "your body cam shows you attempting to intervene. You advised Officer Sullivan to verify the manifest." "Yes, sir," Chen said, her voice small. He told me it was his scene. He wouldn't listen." "Noted," the commissioner said. "But you also stood by and allowed him to place his hands on her. We'll be discussing that in your review. For now, you're on desk duty." He then turned back to Sullivan. "Mark, badge and gun. Hand them over." "What? Captain, badge and gun. You are suspended, without pay, effective immediately, pending termination for gross misconduct, violation of procedure, and conduct unbecoming an officer." Sullivan, his hands shaking, unclipped his badge from his belt and placed it on the table. He then unholstered his service weapon, unloaded the magazine, and placed it down. He was, in an instant, a civilian who had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The door opened. Sarah Jenkins walked in, followed by Robert Thompson. Sullivan looked up. He saw the man from the phone. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and his eyes were like chips of steel. Robert didn't speak to Sullivan. He didn't even look at him. He looked at Captain Miller. "Captain, I trust you are handling this." "Mr. Thompson," Miller said, standing up, "I want to offer my profound apologies on behalf of the Port Authority." "Save it," Robert said, holding up a hand. "I don't want apologies. I want accountability. This man," he finally gestured to Sullivan, "put his hands on my daughter. He criminalized her for being black in first class. I want him fired, not suspended. Fired. I want his certification revoked. We are proceeding with termination, sir. I assure you." "Good." Robert's gaze then shifted to another part of the building. "Where is the flight attendant?" Trent was in a different room, an HR office. He was sitting across from the vice president of in-flight services, who had been called in from his home on a Friday night, and two lawyers from Globalis's corporate counsel. I thought the ticket was suspicious," Trent stammered for the 10th time. "She was being hostile. I was following the see something, say something protocol." The VP cut him off. "Mr. Davies, let's be perfectly clear about what you did. You did not see something. You saw a black teenager in a sweatshirt, and you decided she didn't belong. You took the malicious, biased complaint of another passenger, Mrs. Croft, and you used it as an excuse to act on your own prejudice. You did not verify the passenger manifest. You did not consult your purser. You did not inform the captain. You called the police on a 17-year-old girl, our customer, who was sitting quietly in her assigned, fully paid-for seat. I was just... You, the VP continued, his voice devoid of emotion, have exposed this airline to a level of legal and financial liability that is staggering. Do you know who Aegis Dynamics is?" "They're a corporate account," Trent whispered. "They are not a corporate account, you fool. They are the corporate account. Was. They were the corporate account. Mr. Thompson officially terminated the contract 1 hour ago, an act that will cost this company, by initial estimates, nearly $500 million in lost revenue over the next 5 years, all because you couldn't be polite." The finality of the number hung in the air. Trent felt the floor drop out from under him. "Your employment with Globalis Airlines is terminated, effective immediately. You will be escorted from the premises. Your credentials are revoked, and, given the circumstances, we will be contesting your unemployment claim. Furthermore, we will be placing a permanent "Do Not Hire" flag on your record, which will be shared with all our partner airlines. You will not work on a major carrier again. Now get out. Trent, his face ashen, was led out by security. His high-flying life was over. Finally, there was Mrs. Beatrice Croft. She was not in an HR office. She was in the public terminal, fuming. She had been rebooked, but only after being held for questioning by airline security. She was now in the economy line for a different carrier, a red-eye flight on a budget airline, at a cost of $3,000 for a one-way ticket. Her phone buzzed. It was an email from Globalis Airlines. Dear Mrs. Croft, following a review of the incident on flight GA100, we have determined that your malicious and knowingly false report against another passenger, Miss Maya Thompson, was the primary catalyst for the safety and security disturbance that led to the flight's cancellation. Your actions caused significant operational disruption and endangered a fellow passenger. Effective immediately, your Globalis Airlines A Advantage Executive Platinum status is permanently revoked. Furthermore, you and any members of your household account are hereby banned, for life, from any and all travel on Globalis Airlines and our associated One World partners. This decision is final and non-negotiable. What? She shrieked, drawing stairs. They can't do this. My husband is a platinum member. She called her husband. He was already on the line, with his own corporate travel department, screaming that his and his wife's accounts had been summarily locked. The karma had been swift, digital, and absolute. The Gulfstream G650, tail number N900RD, was a whisper in the night sky. At 45,000 feet, it existed in a realm of impossible quiet, a pressurized cocoon of cream leather, polished walnut, and brushed platinum, gliding through the stratosphere high above the turbulent Atlantic. The chaos of JFK's Terminal 8 was a distant memory, a bad dream muffled by 10 miles of empty air. Inside, Maya Thompson was curled up on a divan that was softer than most beds. She had a cashmere blanket draped over her legs, but she was still cold. A bone-deep chill that had nothing to do with the cabin's perfect climate control. She was replaying the incident, the sneer on Trent's face, the hard, contemptuous eyes of Officer Sullivan, the almost physical weight of his hand on her arm, the way his fingers had dug into her bicep. She rubbed the spot, imagining a bruise that wasn't there. Across the cabin, her father, Robert Thompson, was not resting. He was at a table, his laptop open, a satellite phone pressed to his ear. He was not Dad right now. He was the CEO of Aegis Dynamics, and he was waging a war on 3 fronts. "David," he said into the phone, his voice low and devoid of emotion. "No, I don't want to hear James Harrington's apology. I'll take his call in the morning. For now, here is what's happening. The contract is terminated. That's non-negotiable." "Yes, I know it's a $400 million contract. They should have thought of that before they condoned their staff assaulting my daughter. You're right, it is a logistics nightmare. But I run a logistics company, David. My team is already rerouting our European freight through Lufthansa and our Asian routes through Singapore Airlines. We'll be fully transitioned by Monday." Maya watched him, mesmerized. She had seen him in boardrooms, seen him give speeches. But this was different. This was the unleashing of a lifetime's worth of accumulated power, all focused like a laser on one single event. "The body cam footage?" Robert continued. "I'm not surprised it was leaked. Disgusted Port Authority source, I'd wager. Good. I want it on every network by the 8 a.m. news cycle. Yes, our PR team will have a statement. We're not suing. We're not asking for money. We are stating what happened. As for the other matter, the donation. Yes, 8 figures is an acceptable start. I want it split evenly. The NACP Legal Defense Fund, and a new endowment at her university, the Maya Thompson Scholarship for Women in Quantum Physics. I want the press release on that finalized before we land. Thank you, David. He ended the call, the silence of the cabin rushing back in. He finally looked up, his eyes meeting Maya's. The hard steel of the CEO dissolved, and he was just her father, his face etched with a pained exhaustion. How are you doing, sweetheart? I don't know, Maya said, her voice small. I keep seeing his face. The cop. He really hated me, Dad. I know, Robert said, unclipping his seatbelt and moving to sit on the divan opposite her. I know. You ruined their lives, didn't you? Trent. Sullivan. That woman. Robert steepled his fingers, his expression unreadable. They chose their own path, Maya. They made a series of choices, all of them rooted in prejudice and arrogance. They just never, in their wildest dreams, imagined there would be consequences. Tonight, there were consequences. The first consequence was unfolding in a windowless, beige-painted room in the Port Authority's central precinct at JFK. Mark Sullivan sat at a metal table, the dregs of a cold, bitter coffee in a styrofoam cup in front of him. He had been stripped of his badge and his service weapon. He was just a man in a police-issue polo shirt, and he was sweating. Across from him sat his captain, Miller, and a woman he had never seen before, a deputy commissioner from Internal Affairs. I just don't understand the suspension, Sullivan was complaining, his voice whiny in a way it had never been on the street. I was following the crew's request. It's their plane. They say remove. I remove. It's standard procedure. No, Mark, Captain Miller said, his voice a low growl of contained fury. Standard procedure is to assess. Standard procedure is to de-escalate. Standard procedure is to verify. You did none of those things. We pulled your body cam footage. From the second you stepped onto that jet bridge, you were hostile. You were an attack dog looking for a target, and that flight attendant pointed you at a 17-year-old girl. She was non-compliant. She was terrified, Miller roared, slamming his hand on the table. The coffee cup jumped. And she was right. She was a ticketed passenger with more right to be in that seat than you had to be on that plane. You assaulted a minor. You illegally detained her. The deputy commissioner slid a tablet across the table. This leaked 40 minutes ago, Officer Sullivan. It's currently the lead story on every news channel in the tri-state area. The mayor's office just released a statement calling you a disgrace to the uniform. The Police Benevolent Association representative who was supposed to be here? He called. He's stuck in traffic. He's not coming, Mark. Sullivan looked at the screen. It was his own face, captured by his partner's camera, twisted in a mask of rage as he grabbed Maya's arm. The audio was crystal clear. I'm not going to ask you again, or I will make you get up. A sick, acidic feeling rose in his throat. This wasn't a suspension. This was an execution. I can explain, he stammered. No, you can't, the commissioner said, her voice flat. You're fired, Sullivan. Effective immediately for gross misconduct, violation of protocol, and conduct unbecoming. We're handing our file to the district attorney's office tomorrow morning. They're exploring criminal charges, assault, unlawful imprisonment. You are done. Mark Sullivan, the man who just hours before had held the power of arrest and detention, the man who had loved the fear he inspired, slumped in his chair. He was powerless. He was infamous. And he was, for the first time in his career, truly afraid. The second consequence was landing in a small, overly tidy apartment in Queens, just 5 miles from the airport, close enough that the windows rattled every time a heavy jet took off. Trent Davies was sitting on his sofa, still in his uniform, but his tie was ripped off and his top buttons were undone. He was on his laptop, frantically searching for jobs. Flight attendant, JetBlue, flight attendant, Delta, flight attendant, American. He'd been fired on the spot. Terminated for cause, they said. No severance, no benefits, just an armed escort out of the operations building. He'd already applied for a position with United. He just checked his email. A rejection. It had come back in 90 seconds. It was an automated, system-level rejection. He stared at the screen, confused. He tried again, applying at Delta. He filled out the form, uploaded his resume. 15 years of exemplary service, awards for customer care, and hit submit. He watched his inbox. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Ping. Dear Mr. Davies, thank you for your interest in Delta Airlines. At this time, we have decided not to move forward with your application. A cold panic, colder than the recycled air at 30,000 feet, began to creep up his spine. He picked up his phone and called a number he knew by heart. It was a senior purser at American Airlines, someone he'd known for years. Sharon, hey, it's Trent Davies. A long pause on the other end. I know who you are, Trent. Her voice was ice. Listen, Sharon, a crazy thing happened tonight. I'm looking for a change. I was thinking of coming over to American, and I was wondering if... You're blacklisted, Trent, she cut him off. What? No. That's not a real thing. It is tonight, Sharon said. The video is everywhere. The memo went out from Globalis Corporate to every One World and Sky Team partner. Do not hire. You're a liability. You're poison. You just cost your airline $500 million. Who in their right mind would hire you? You'll never work on a major carrier again. Lose my number. The line clicked dead. Trent stared at the phone. He looked around his apartment, the walls covered in framed photos of him in Paris, in Tokyo, in Rome. His entire identity, his entire life was built on that uniform. It was his status. It was his escape. And in an instant, it was gone. He was just a man in a small apartment in Queens, grounded for life. The third consequence was checking into the Savoy in London, 12 hours after she was supposed to. Mrs. Beatrice Croft was fuming. Her back was a knot of agony from sitting in a non-reclining middle seat in the last row of a Norse Atlantic economy cabin, a flight she'd had to book at the gate for $4,000. She threw her bag on the floor of the suite. "This is an outrage," she said to her husband, Richard, who had been waiting for her, his face a thundercloud. "An outrage? You think this is an outrage, Beatrice?" he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "I just got off a 3-hour call with the board of my firm. Sit down." "I don't want to sit down. I want to call Globalis and demand, sit down." She sat, shocked by his tone. "This morning," Richard said, pacing the room, "Aegis Dynamics pulled their account from our firm, their entire global account, a $20 million a year retainer, gone." "What? What does that have to do with me?" "They cited a morals clause. Conduct of a principal spouse, bringing the firm into disrepute. It seems, Beatrice, that while you were playing Queen of First Class, you decided to pick on Robert Thompson's daughter. You were the concerned passenger in the report. Your name is all over it. Globalists gave you up in a heartbeat to save their own skin." They named me?" she whispered, horrified. "Oh, yes. And Robert Thompson? He sits on the board of our bank. He sits on the board of the university I went to. He's also on the acquisitions committee for the golf club. What? What are you saying? I'm saying, Richard said, his face pale, that the bank is re-evaluating our line of credit. The university has postponed my invitation to the alumni gala, and the club has suspended our membership, pending a review. In 12 hours, Beatrice, you have systematically destroyed every pillar of the life we have built. My partners are demanding I resign. They're forcing me into early retirement with a reduced package. Beatrice Croft stared at him, the room spinning. It wasn't about the flight. It wasn't about the airline status she'd lost. It was everything. The social standing she'd spent a lifetime cultivating. The perceived prestige she'd wielded so cruelly in that lounge. The very belonging she had tried to deny Maya was now being denied to her. She had tried to get a 17-year-old girl kicked out of first class. In return, she had been kicked out of her entire world. Back on the G650, the first light of dawn was breaking over the eastern horizon, painting the curved edge of the earth in bands of brilliant violet and orange. Robert had finally finished his calls. The cabin was still, save for the gentle hum of the engines. "Dad," Maya said, her voice quiet but stronger now. "All those other people, the ones on the 777, they're stranded. They're blaming me. I saw the comments on Twitter before I turned it off. They all think I'm some spoiled rich kid who got angry and had her daddy cancel a flight." "They are," Robert said, his eyes not leaving hers. "And they're wrong. They're blaming the victim because it's easier than blaming the system that allowed this to happen. They're angry about their inconvenience. I'm angry about the injustice. Do not ever confuse the two." "But was it the right thing to do?" she asked. "It just feels so big. You used a sledgehammer to kill a fly." "No, sweetheart," Robert said, leaning forward. "That wasn't a fly, it was a rattlesnake, and it was coiled in your seat." He took a deep breath, collecting his thoughts. This was the lesson. "I want you to understand power, Maya. People like Trent, Sullivan, and that woman, they have a little bit of it. A uniform, a name tag, a sense of unearned social superiority. And they use that small, petty power to punch down. They use it to make themselves feel big by making people they perceive as small feel even smaller. They did it to you because they looked at you, and they thought you had no power. They thought you were an easy target. They made a fatal miscalculation." "I didn't feel powerful," she whispered, looking at her hands. "You weren't in that moment," he said softly. "You were a 17-year-old girl, surrounded and threatened by 3 adults in positions of authority. You were trapped. That's why I had to act. What I used today wasn't just power, Maya. It was leverage. It was a shield. I didn't cancel that flight to punish them, though I'm not sad that they were punished. I cancelled it because the environment was no longer safe. The crew was hostile. The security was compromised. The entire system on that aircraft, from the flight attendants to the police, was broken. The only way to fix it, to stop that poison from flying, was to ground the plane and reset the entire system." He looked out the window at the new day. Those 300 passengers, their inconvenience is a tragedy of proximity. They were collateral damage in a fight they couldn't even see. But that fight was happening. You were just the only one on the front lines. My job as your father was to end the fight, and my job as a CEO, as a partner to that airline, was to show them, in the only language a billion-dollar corporation understands, that their system had failed in the most catastrophic way possible. He smiled, a small, tired smile. "The money Globalis is donating, that's not sorry money. That's We got court money, but we're going to use it to fund physics and engineering scholarships for 100 other brilliant young women of color, so that the next time someone like Trent sees a girl like you in first class, it won't be such a shock to his system. We're not just correcting this one injustice, Maya. We're investing in a future where it's less likely to happen. He put his hand over hers. What you did today, before you called me. You stayed calm. You stated facts. You looked Officer Sullivan in the eye, and you didn't let him break you. That was your power. You held your ground until the cavalry could arrive. I am more proud of you for that than for any research paper or physics award. Never, ever forget your own strength. Maya looked at her father, truly seeing the man who had built an empire from nothing, the man who had faced 1,000 no's and 100 "you don't belong here's" in his own life, and had built a fortress high enough to shield his family. The Gulf Stream began its long, gentle descent. Through the window, the green fields of England, veiled in morning mist, rose to meet them. The plane was steady. The turbulence was over. Maya took a deep breath, the chill finally leaving her bones. She was safe, and she was ready. The story of Maya Thompson is a shocking reminder of what happens when prejudice and power are given a uniform. But it's also a powerful story of karma. It shows that in our modern world, accountability can be swift and absolute. Officer Sullivan, Trent, and Mrs. Croft learned that the hard way. They thought they were targeting a powerless girl, but they were actually ending their own careers. What do you think? Was this hard karma justified? Have you ever seen someone so spectacularly abuse their power only to have it blow up in their face? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This is a real-life story of what happens when you underestimate the person sitting next to you. If you believe in justice and want to hear more true stories of karma, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more content just like this.